the record straight. And the reason I want to is because I saw an ad just this afternoon, and at the beginning of the ad it said, "Two good men." It had Mitt Romney and me. And then for the next 28 seconds, there wasn't a whole lot of good said about me. And the end of it was that I wasn't that good a guy after all. But then I saw another ad, and this is what finally got to me. I'm kind of expecting to be attacked here in Iowa. We've spent $1 for every 20 that Mitt Romney has spent in this state. I want you to stop and think about that. 20 to 1 outspent. And we're leading. We're ahead. And so when people get that far behind having spent that much money, they get desperate. Desperate's one thing, but dishonest is something else. When you get desperate and dishonest, it's not a very pretty sight. But then I saw the ad that he's using against Senator McCain in New Hampshire. Now folks, Senator McCain is, I guess by many people's standards, he's a rival. He's a candidate for president of the Republican Party like I am. But as I've said on national television, as I would say on any stage in America, regardless of the politics, John McCain is a true, honest-to-God American hero. And we should respect him. And it's one thing to attack me, but it just kind of made me get a little bit concerned that if that's all we're going to do in the Republican Party is attack each other, then maybe all we're doing is making it a whole lot easier for the other side to win the White House next year. And I'm going to tell you, there's none of us on the stage that you need to be nearly as afraid of as you ought to be afraid of any of those guys on the stage. Let me make this clear. It's not because they're bad people. In fact, several of them I consider to be friends. I have great respect for them and know some of them and like, frankly, all of them. I don't have anything against any of them. But here's what I mean when I say it would not be the best thing. Because I don't know of any of you who honestly believe that you're not paying enough in taxes and that you would welcome the idea to put more of your paycheck into the federal treasury. Now, if you feel that way, I'll get you an envelope. There's nothing in the law that prevents you from writing an additional check to the federal government, and you can go ahead and just self-tax yourself a little bit more. But I doubt I'd have any takers if I hold up an envelope and say, would anyone like to pay more federal tax? Because you just don't feel like you're giving your fair share. You just don't feel like you're coughing up enough, and you'd like for the IRS to come over to your house and take just one more bite out of your apple. Some of you folks are down to the core, and the last thing you need is for the IRS to come back and get at you one more time. I have a tax plan that's totally different than raising taxes. It's getting rid of the IRS and getting rid of all the taxes. I'd like for April 15th to be just another beautiful spring day in Iowa, with weather a little different than today. I'd like for us to be able to not have that kind of fear. The average American is more afraid of an IRS audit than they are getting mugged. That's a true, actual study that was conducted by Frank Luntz, who does polling for Fox News. And I thought he was kidding, but it occurred to me as I thought about it, and it makes sense, because you got to remember that when you get mugged, it's only going to last a few seconds. And they can only get what you have in your pocket. When the IRS comes after you, it's going to take a long time. And they won't finish until they take every last dime you have. Our tax system ought not to be something that we hate and are so afraid of. We ought to change it. I don't believe, frankly, you want a healthcare system where a government bureaucrat tells you who your doctor's going to be and whether or not you can have a procedure. Now, by the way, I don't think the Republicans have it completely right, because some of them want to turn it over to a private insurance company. And I don't trust all the guys in the private insurance companies a whole lot more than I trust the bureaucrats in the government. I do trust me, and I think a healthcare system ought to empower you to make your health decisions. It ought to make sure that the health coverage goes with you, not with your employer. And it ought to be more about the 21st century than the 19th century, which much of our health coverage is really more about. It ought to focus more on prevention rather than intervention. It ought to make sure that you have the tools to be healthy and well, rather than wait until you are catastrophically ill and then trying to figure out how in the world to pay for the incredible damage that's already been done to you. That's the kind of health care system that we need. And it's the kind I would bring as president. Well, I told you when I became governor, I faced a lot of the challenges, and we took them on. We improved our schools, and the Correct Foundation said that we had done more to reform education in 5 years than had been done in the 50 previous years. Our teacher salaries went from the lowest to the highest in our region. But we didn't just pay them more. We expected more, and we got more. They deserved to get more because we raised the standards. We measured carefully. We had accountability. And the teachers performed beautifully because our test scores in every single grade in which we tested went up every year after we instituted higher standards. Because, you know, a good basketball coach will tell you that if your kids are having a hard time hitting the goal, the smart thing is not to lower the goal so they can hit it easier. The smart thing is to practice harder and to play better so that you can hit the goal that's already there. The worst thing we can do is dumb down the education system so we artificially make it look like kids are doing better. The best thing is to have the kind of curriculum that's built around kids so that they succeed and they love education and they love learning, rather than the system we have now where 6,000 kids drop out every single day. That's what we rebuilt our roads. One of the things Mitt Romney says that I raise taxes. Well, the people in my state, by 80%, voted for a bond program that financed those roads. 80%. By the way, I would take that vote next Thursday night on any given day. 80% of the vote would be just fine with me. That's pretty good at anything. And we totally rebuilt our road system and our bridges. We didn't have them falling down. And I would ask you to check his record in Massachusetts. He probably doesn't want you to know what kind of shape the roads were in when he left office, or the bridges, and how many were substandard. He says, I raised taxes. Well, we had a Supreme Court order. That Supreme Court order said that we had to raise money for education, and we didn't have an option, or we'd be in contempt of the court. I kind of thought that when I took the oath to obey the Constitution, that's what I really meant. And so I did. And we financed our schools and made them constitutional. And I'll tell you something. The result is, those test scores went up and our kids started doing better, and more went to college and more finished college. And for that I don't apologize, because I think an education is the ticket to the next kind of generation of getting out of poverty. I understand that myself. Because if it hadn't been for education, the reason I believe that is because while I believe education is ultimately a mom and dad decision, and I would do anything I could to make sure that mothers and fathers make those choices, whether they homeschool, whether they go to public school, private school, that's their choice, and we ought to help them to make that choice, whatever's best for their kids. But I'm a product of the public schools, and my 3 children are. And I know this, that I wouldn't be running for president had it not been for teachers who were dedicated to giving me the best possible education they could in the school system of Hope, Arkansas as a little kid. And the reason I know that that's true is because no male in my family upstream from me even graduated high school. I was the first male in my entire family line to even do so, much less go to college. On my mother's side of the family, I'm a generation away from dirt floors and outdoor toilets. I understand something about what an education can do to empower you and give you the opportunity to rise above circumstances that you didn't get to choose. And I want every kid in America to be able to do that. I don't want any kid growing up thinking he or she is stuck where they are and they can't ever get beyond it. Because I know that with education and hard work, we can achieve anything and the dreams can come true. My dad passed away 3 months before I was sworn in as the 44th governor of the state of Arkansas. And I think it would be the proudest thing in the world if he could have been there and maybe spent one night in the governor's mansion of Arkansas, because he never thought he'd get on the grounds. And I got to tell you something, I can only believe that he has to be looking down from heaven tonight and thinking not only did his son become the 44th governor of Arkansas,